Welcome to my channel AI Basics with AK. Here we are with another new episode, Loops and Breaks. Why waste time? Let's jump directly into our subject. So today we will discuss three pieces. One is ifs, first and whiles. All of them today we will be discussing are very toy examples. In future episodes, we will use these as our basics and then we'll further complicate it. So this is much more fundamental. This episode is much more fundamental for the beginners if they want to grasp the details of the future episodes. Oh, loops, it's not Fruit Loops. Oh, I love it at times. So the purpose of loops, it creates an execution control. It triggers a reaction. Like if there is an control statement, okay, and then if something is true, okay, it triggers a reaction kind of a thing. And maybe it tries to respond to an event kind of a thing. Either of them can happen. Basically, in all loops, especially the for loop and if loop and while loop, it has two things. One is a control statement, and after a control statement, what it has to do and what it should not do. So this is a quick background of while loops and what loops contains. So let's directly jump into our if. If fundamentally is an checks a boolean output. So if and then this is a boolean. If something is true, it goes into this execution part. Else this will not go into the execution part. This is what it is discussed in the first out cell of the coding, where you can see if true, it means the condition is already true, which we have used the boolean output here. So it goes into this if loop and then it prints this statement. However, when you do this, okay, it doesn't go because it is false. Only if it is true, it goes inside. Since it is false, it doesn't go inside. So the output is not printed. So that's why it is blank. Okay. Similarly, since this is an boolean output, we can use control statements that we have discussed in earlier episodes, like less than or equal to, double equal to, like these statements as our conditional statements. And then based on this condition, if something is true or false, go inside the loop. So this is how we can interlink our episodes as well. This is especially good for the beginners, where they can interlink the episodes what they have learned in the earlier episodes. So here we are using control statements of the previous episodes, wherein we'll get a boolean as an output, and then we are using that boolean in the if statements to control whether it has to go inside the if or should go outside the if. So this is how we can interlink all these pieces. Okay, let's come back and let's see these examples. Here we are defining x as 2, and if x is equal to 2, it has to go inside here, else it should not go here. Accordingly, since this is 2 as we have defined it, it goes inside and successfully prints x equal to true. So here, okay, to explain it out whether it will go or not, okay, I have used another statement here. Since this if and else, like if something is true, you execute it, else you execute this. So here this is false, so it will not go in this if block, so it will come to the else block and this gets printed. So if it is true, it goes inside, else it comes to the false block. So that's how it works. If you write else, if we don't write else, it will not get printed here, like what we have seen it here. If we don't write else, it will not get printed. Similarly, okay, let's go to this example. Here we are using two control statements, But however, these are two if statements. This is one if statement and this is a second if statement. So that's why we get two outputs, because x is equal to 2. Because x is equal to 2, it goes here and prints, and it also comes here and it checks this if else block, and it prints this x does not equal to 2. So that's why we see here two outputs. However, to avoid these two outputs, maybe if we want only to print this, we can use elif. So like this, we can have multiple elifs, like if, elif, elif, and finally else. What does it mean is that, okay, if something is true, it goes here. If elif, this part is true, it will go here. If this part is true, it goes here. If none of these blocks are successful, okay, it comes here and executes this block. So that's how if, elif, and else will work. So somebody who is familiar with Excel if else formulas, it works in the same way. There is nothing rocket science here. It's just programming. During programming, you can use multiple control statements and blocks such that your code can be automated in a much easier fashion. So here, as you can see it here, this, we can only see that the first block gets printed and these two blocks does not get printed. Now we are just further complicating an example to just showcase how we can use multiple kind of a thing. Here we have nested if blocks, like this is a larger if else block, and inside we have another if else. Here what we are trying to showcase printing is that, okay, if this control block is greater than 10, and further if x is equal to 2, you go to the respective blocks. So when we define these variables as 10 and 4, okay, it comes like when it checks, okay, it is greater than or equal to 10, it goes into this block. And then further, okay, it comes here and checks whether x is equal to 4. So x is, it's not 2, okay, it is not 3. So it comes here and prints this third block. When we define the control block as 8, since it is here, it becomes a false because this becomes false. So it goes here. So it skips all these statements and comes here and prints the fourth block. So this is just quick comprehension kind of a thing. If you understand this, okay, that's all about if statements. For is a very beautiful statement, especially for iteration. And if you want to do some repeated work over the times. Say for example, what happens in, say for example, you want to print this statement t, but however, you want to print it for 5 times. Ideally, you have to write 5 print statements, right? Print t, print so and so, like 5 print statements. However, if you use for, what you can do is that for iterate, say below for 5 times, and then you write print t, say for example, automatically instead of writing 5 print statements like this, you can complete the same purpose, okay, in 2 statements. So in for loop, this becomes my control statement and this becomes my body. We are trying to control, okay, the body to execute it for 5 times. Let's see the examples. Here we have defined a list 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we want to print and this list output individually. So what we can do is that we can use this statement. Now here you can see that this is the syntax for any item, like this is an iterator. Assume it out, ideally people use it in for an iteration I. So you iterate on this list or some content. So you iterate. So while doing iteration, what it does is that, so this iterator I goes to this list in a sequential manner. So it goes to first this 0, and then 1, this is and then 3, and then finally 4th. Accordingly, for each and every iteration, how it goes to each and every list item individually and prints that item. So what we can see it here is that we can also declare the list also in this fashion, which we will learn much more nuances in the next episode when we are discussing lists and tuples. So here we are trying to give a range of 5. Range of 5 means there are 5 list items ranging from 0 to 4. What we are trying to say is that you iterate, okay, on this loop for 5 times and this print this statement 5 times. This is what we have discussed at the beginning of this section of for. So this iterates and then prints for 5 times. Say for example, we want to use if statement here because we have learned in our previous episode. Yes, we can use that. Say for example, here we are iterating in this for loop for 5 times. In this 5 times, I have added an additional print statement, print I, when I is equal to 1. So when I is equal to 0, okay, since this is false, it does not get printed. So it goes here directly and prints here. When I is equal to 1, it comes here. This is a true statement. So this gets printed, which you can see it here. And also this gets printed because this is getting executed for 5 times. Like this, the remaining until iteration completes, okay, it executes this block. Say for example, you want to break this iteration once it enters into this if block, then you can use something called as a break, where you are putting a break to this iteration. What you're trying to say is that when I is equal to 1, you print that I and then break this for loop. So here you can see that when I is equal to 0, since this is false, because this statement here boolean becomes false, so these two statements does not get executed. So it comes here and this statement get executed. When I is equal to 1, it comes to this block and it prints 1 and then it gets break and finally it comes out of this for loop. So that's the beauty of for loop. Okay, for loop iterates over a list of items. In the next slide we will be seeing while. While is also a loop, but it is more dangerous loop as I look at it. In the earlier slide we have discussed about for loop, where for iterates over some list of items and then till this iteration list gets exhausted, this executes this block. However, while executes based on a boolean condition. If this boolean is true, this blocks executes forever. So this is what we see it here, which I have commented, where if it is while true and print this, this is printed every time. If I use this statement, this particular code will run forever until we force stop the Python program to kill that loop. So that's why this becomes more dangerous loop, because if something programmatically, say for example, it goes into this loop of while loop, this loop runs forever and we don't know where the bug is. So this has to be used at a caution, and I recommend to use for loop most of the times while. So you may ask, if this runs forever, then what is the purpose of this loop? So we can come out of this loop, right? Either this boolean has to be false, and also we can use some break statements inside this loop such that it comes out of the loop. So there are only two ways. Either you have to ensure that somehow this boolean becomes false such that this comes out of this loop, or else inside this loop, based on some condition, you ensure that we use break statement. So to discuss, for ideally iterates on a list of items, and when we are using an iterator I, say for example, it incrementally iterates to this list individually till this list gets completed. While since it is an infinite loop, it also iterates on something. What it iterates is that it iterates on an infinite list. Okay, it iterates forever on this infinite list forever. Because this does not have any iteration list, it iterates forever. So while iterating, as we have seen it in the for loop, it also iterates infinitely, that we have discussed. It iterates on this each individual unknown list. Since this list is not known, so it just iterates on an unknown list. So let's come back to our further examples that we have seen it here, and also an no loop conditions. What we have discussed earlier is that if while it is a condition, while this is a boolean, right? And then if that boolean is true, it goes on to this infinite loop, which we have seen it here in this example. If it is false, this doesn't go. So this is that example here where it goes on to the no loop. Since this is an infinite loop, how does this infinite loop works? Based on this infinite list, where it iterates over an infinite list. How can we break this list? Either you use a break here, or else, since this is a boolean, unlike a for loop, you ensure that this boolean becomes false such that it comes out of this loop that we have also seen in this example like this. So these two statements accordingly discusses break as well as boolean becoming false. Here there is an infinite loop. However, we have declared something as an I is equal to 0. So since it iterates here like I is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3 and so on. Similarly, we are updating I. So when I becomes 2, we are saying break it. Got it? So once I is equal to 0 here, it comes here, this I becomes 1. When I is equal to 1, okay, this statement is false. So it goes again here. And then it prints this statement. So when it is 0, it gets printed, 1, it is get printed. When I is equal to 2, because it gets update here, it comes here and breaks the statement and it only gets printed 2 times. Similarly here we have used 2 statements. Of course, I have used a for loop also here, but let me just discuss first while statement here. Let's exclude this for an initial discussion. Now while I is less than is equal to 5, this is our condition, and then we are updating this I as we iterate over this loop forever. So when this I becomes 5, so 5 times, it means when I becomes I is 0, so here 0 is less than 5? No. So it goes into this, 0 is less than 5, so it is true. So it goes into this list, it updates into 1, it comes here, 1 is less than 5, similarly 2, 3, 4. Once it becomes 5, it becomes false, and then it comes out of this while loop. Now inside this while loop, we are just iterating based on this I. Because this is a list, we also just iterating this creating a list based on this range of I that we have discussed in the previous slide, and then just printing this statement here, where we are just printing both an inner loop and an outer loop kind of a thing. That's why you can see it here is that this is printed every time like 0, 0, 1, which is nothing but an inner loop here, and an outer loop that you can see it out as 1, 2, 3, and 4. And once it becomes 5, okay, it gets breaks. So that's why you can't see it here. That's it. That's more about if, for, and while. So that's it. If as been mentioning over last few episodes, all this being programmed in Colab. If you can click on this link, you can see the Colab file. Beginners who are very new to this Python programming, I recommend you to download this Python notebook and start experimenting on these loops, because this is most fundamental in the programming scenarios. Before jumping to our demo, as usual, let me just quickly run through a homework. As usual, this homework has two questions. The first question has wherein you have to take integer as an input. You may Google it, how to take input from an program. It's very simple, and check whether that is positive, negative, or a zero using if loops. For the second question, create a factorial. The factorial is like you give a number 5, it calculates the 5 factorial, wherein you have to multiply by 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. So using both for loop and as well as while loop. Beautiful, isn't so? So once you do, you can do it either in Jupyter Notebook or in Python file. And post you do it, you can comment your link here, so then I can view it and give a feedback, or else get a feedback from my friends. See you in the demo. So we'll start with the demo from what we have learned in our previous episode by creating a string variable. So let's create a variable called as, say, AI basics. So you can see it on the right hand side. Variable is created and it is being assigned with a value AI basics. Now let's use if loop and try to print some statements. Here what we'll do is that if, so it starts with if, and let's say for example variable, since we want to use a conditional statement and this is a string, we have to use double equal to. And let's compare this with AI basics, and then to go inside the condition we have to use a colon, and after you enter a colon, automatic there will be an indentation for a Python. After that we can use a print statement. Say for example this is first block. Now since this is a valid condition, since this is a boolean, you can always check whether this is a boolean by printing this statement. So since this is a true, since this is true, it goes inside this statement and prints it out. Say for example we want to change it into false. Say for example if we change this into false, it is false, right? Because we are saying var is not equal to AI basics. Since var variable is equal to AI basics, this particular condition is false. If we change this equal to not equal to, automatically this block will not get executed. The earlier what you have seen as a first block here, you will not see it here. Let's revert back to our earlier ones. Now let's explore with an if-else ones. If var not equal to AI basics, print artificial, else print AI. Now Now you can see here, this is a false statement, right? So if it is a false, this will not get executed, automatically it will go here. And since we have an else block here, this will get executed. Now let's declare one more variable. Let us call var1 is equal to a numerical. This time let's define something called numerical here. Now what we'll do is that we will try to perform some numerical operations within it. Now say for example, if var1 is say for example less than or equal to 30, print, so less than, so let's change it out, less than 5, less than 5. Else if var1 is less than or equal to 8, print less than 8. Else print greater than 8. Now you can see that since var is 10, it will not get executed this block because this is a false statement which we can cross check here. This is false. Also you can cross check the below statement of where 1 less than or equal to 8, which is also false. Since these both statements are false, these two code blocks will not get executed. Automatically it will go into the finals else block which gets executed. Say for example, the moment we change this var1 to say 7, the first statement is false, the second statement is true. So this gets into this block and this gets executed, which is shown as less than. Beautiful, isn't so? Now let's jump into for loop. In the for loop, what we have seen it out is the range. Okay, for iterated, this is our iterator in range of 5 is nothing but 0 to 4, and if I want to print I, it prints 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. It prints all these numbers. Say for example, in the same print, if I want to keep a condition here, if I is equal to 1, break, and to avoid a confusion, say for example, I will comment this. Now here you can see that, okay, instead of here what we have done is that we have used a for loop for range of 5, it means 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4, and when I is equal to 3 we said to break it out, so it will not print from third iterator onwards. As you can see it here, it has printed 0, 1 and 2, and the third iterator has not been printed. We can also do some multiplications inside it or some additions. So for example, if we want to add all these numbers from 0 to 5 onwards, I'm just doing a simple ones. Let's say sum is equal to 0, where I'm initializing with some variable as 0. After that, what we'll do is that sum is equal to sum plus I. And finally, let's print sum. So initially the sum is 0. To understand that, let me comment this. Initially, the sum variable is 0. Once I iterate by adding all these numbers between 0 to 4, because it will come first here, it checks on a 0. 0 plus 0, it is 0. It iterator goes to the first value. 0 plus 1, sum is assigned with a value of 1, 2, 3 and 4. If you want to know, we can do that iteration. Say for example, range of 2 is 0, 1, 1. So the first it will get sum adds 0 and 1. So the value of 1 is assigned to it. Now if iterator changes its value to 3, so it goes to 3 and 0, 1 and 2 gets added. The sum is 3. The iterator goes to the 4th. It adds 0, 1, 2 and 3. The sum becomes 6. And finally iterator moves to the final one and all 4 numbers gets added. So 0 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3. The sum finally gets assigned with a variable 10. So that's about if. I think with this example you can easily do the factorial one. They are very simple. Let's go through one while example for today's episode. Let's initialize I with 0, and while I, say for example, less than or equal to 5, let's print, say this is statement comma I, and let's increment I is equal to I plus 2. So what it has to do is that it has to print first I is 0. First it has to print statement, this is a statement 0, and then 2, 4, and then it has to exit. Let's see it out. Just wait for a second. The output will come on the right hand side. It's just taking its time. Yeah. So you can see it here. This is the statement 0, 2 and 4. So that's how it is, but I don't recommend to use while loops. That's why I have restricted an example to 1 at this point of time. I hope you love this episode. See you in the next week. Thanks a lot. If you like it, please do like it. This video, share it to your friends, especially to the beginners who are into this Python programming. And then don't tell them to subscribe to my channel. Thanks a lot. See you. Bye bye.